I used to be a police officer, and I've seen my share of crime. Not all cases can be solved through normal means, so I've turned to the paranormal for answers. I've assembled a team of experienced paranormal investigators to take on each unsolved case in an effort to shed new light on old mysteries. It's been called the last flash of rock and roll, a time of innocence in Scranton, Pennsylvania, when lyrics were pure and teens gathered to dance at local pizza parlors. It was then in 1960 when Tommy Genova took the stage and the crowd went wild.
Well, Tommy was just popular locally. He never went like nationally or anything like that. But, he used to do shows, and we sang we did a lot of background for him on his records.
Tommy Genova became known for his hit song, The Lover, and released several singles during his prime, including Farmer John, which was to be used on a film soundtrack.
He had a lot of records. He had a lot of songs out. The Lover was his big one that he wrote. They call me the Lover.
Not long after, the music scene would change. The generation that embraced rock and roll would be replaced by a new youth, and innocence would be lost. Tommy Genova would go on to get married and have a family. He has been described as a loving, caring father. Yet he still lived out the words of his song.
He was a nice guy, but he had a roving eye. He used to mess around a lot with a lot of different women, even married women, and that could be one of the reasons that someone ended up shooting him. He was on the school board, and I think that when he got killed, he was at a school board meeting. That when he was in the parking lot, someone shot him there. So it had to be someone that knew him. Or, they don't just shoot you for nothing, especially in Scranton. It was a safe place.
In 1981, Tommy Genova was president of the Scranton School Board. On January 26th of that year, Genova arrived at the administration building for a school board meeting. After parking his vehicle, he reached in to retrieve his briefcase. It was at this moment that evil stepped out of the shadows and ended Tommy Genova's life with a high-powered rifle loaded with an accelerator bullet, making it difficult for police to identify the murder weapon. The public speculated that Genova was either murdered by a jealous husband or a professional hitman. In 1984, Terry Moran was charged with the murder. It was alleged that Genova was previously involved with Moran's wife. However, charges were dropped. The lead detective on the Tommy Genova case allegedly committed suicide shortly after he started carrying an ankle holster. Some speculate that the detective died under mysterious circumstances and doubt the allegations of suicide. To this day, Tommy Genova's murder remains unsolved.
They don't know who killed him. They still don't to this day. It's still a cold case.
With a lack of answers via conventional means, we decided to turn to the paranormal.
So we're standing in the district admin building parking lot, and this is where Tommy Genova had pulled in his little yellow Honda Civic. He had pulled into this space right here, which is now marked number 3. pulled straight in here, and he was getting out of his car. I believe he stopped when he got out and reached back in to get his briefcase, and that's exactly when he was shot. He was found on the driver's side of his car with a bullet wound to his lower back, lower right-hand side of his back, and he just was laying here gasping for breath and trying to stay alive.
So as we're looking at this scene here, a couple things we're thinking. There was a footprint that was found in the snow. Okay, that's one, and it was a Western-style boot. So we're wondering, and nobody knows at this point, but these are some answers we're trying to get. The individual who committed this act, he either parked nearby in his car and came walking across the parking lot, or right over here is a place where he may have hid. We were kind of talking about that. Maybe this guy hid in here and waited for Tommy Genova to pull up. My thing is, I don't think he would have hidden over here, because this is the door to the building from the parking lot. So there was an admin meeting going on, so anyone that was showing up a little late or that may have come out to get something out of their car would have seen this guy hiding here. So I don't think that would have been the ideal situation. But what we're trying to do is, the idea is that perhaps there may have been spirits around us at any given time. And if any are here that witnessed this act, we're hoping to tap into that, get some responses, get some answers that'll help us come a little bit closer to solving this. Okay, I'm Jeff.
I'm Linda.
And we're here, we're investigators. We're here because we want answers to a crime that happened here back in 1981. A man was murdered. Is there anybody that can give us some answers as to who committed this murder?
Talking, people passing on the street.
We came up into the parking lot here where Tommy Genova was murdered, and we started up a spirit box session. Now the spirit box, it scans through different radio frequencies, so there are bits and parts of radio chatter that come through. But what we're looking for is a direct response to any of the questions that we asked, something directly related to the case. Can you tell us what kind of a gun was used? The person who committed this act, where did he approach from? Can you tell us anything about the victim? Do you know Tommy Genova? We're really looking for some answers. If you're willing to talk to us, that would be amazing. Could you tell us who we're talking to? Could you tell us your name?
What we're trying to figure out is who killed Tommy Genova. Do you have any idea about who it might have been? This murder has gone unsolved for 40 years. We feel it's time to bring justice for the family.
I also have this device in my hand. If you come near it, you could use that to interact with us. It can light up. If you're here, if there's anybody here that's willing to talk to us, please come near this device. During the spirit box session, I wasn't 100% sure if we were getting any responses, There were some bits and parts of speech that came through that we're going to have to analyze, but I took out the K2 meter. And the K2 meter is basically an EMF detector, and I was hoping to use this as another means for something to communicate with us. The K2 meter did not go off once. If there's anybody here, please come near this device to let us know that you're here. It should light up. It should let us know that you're here. We can use that to communicate. Any answers you can give us pertaining to this case would be greatly appreciated. Can you tell us something that the man was wearing, the man who committed this murder?
At the time that the murder occurred, you can clearly see in some of the police photos that there was a chain link fence instead of this black kind of wrought iron looking fence that's here now. And there was a gate right at the very top of the steps here that led down into kind of a back secondary parking lot. My question is, and we may never know the answer to this, if that gate was accessible. And the reason I ask that is because it could have been very easy for someone to park in this back parking lot back here, or to park around the other side of the building. Knowing the way that people drove into this parking lot, how they accessed the parking lot, they would have been hidden. And they very easily could have come up that way and found a place to hide, or just come up that way when Tommy Genova parked, and could have very well have shot him then and run back down there.
During the Spirit Box session, we were very direct in our line of questioning. We're trying to find out any clues, any answers we could get, anything that would help us get another lead in this case. I asked where the vehicle was parked, for a description of the vehicle, for a description of the person, the clothes this person was wearing. These are answers that we have gotten in previous cases to some of these questions. So I was hoping that something would come through and give us an answer to one of these things that would be another lead that we could take.
I heard a few things that I think were responses. I didn't want to immediately call them out. I'd rather go back and actually listen to the audio and see if it actually said what I thought it said. But it did sound like there were a few times when there were some responses to the questions we were asking.
We came out to 20th Street here in Scranton, and this is a location that I believe is tied in with this case.
Mm-hmm.
The detective who was on the case, Detective Hart,
Yes.
he was found dead along this road,
Mm-hmm.
approximately roughly 8 months after the murder. And he was the detective that was on the case. I read some articles, and I haven't done a few more interviews yet, but I've read some cases where it said he was friends with the family.
Right.
And they ruled it as a suicide.
Yes. Gunshot wound to the head.
Yes.
Pistol laying beside him.
So he was found along this road. He lived over on 17th Street. Our goal in coming out here right now is to see if perhaps we can get any answers as to how he died. That's what we're looking for.
Yes.
Was it indeed a suicide? And if so, that brings about questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it wasn't a suicide, what happened to him?
Right. We're standing here at the corner of Oliver Place and 20th Avenue. And this was sort of a short street. 20th Avenue is very short. There's not too many houses along this avenue. But this was where the detective was found. And it's easy to sort of assume that because there's only one street, Oliver Place, that connects 17th Street, where the detective actually lived, and 20th Street, that perhaps he was found right at the street corner somewhere. He was found in the morning about 9:05 on a day that he was not on patrol that day, that he wasn't supposed to be at work, and by somebody that was just simply going to work that morning. So probably somebody that lived in one of these houses a little further up the street here may have passed by and just simply found him here.
One thing to keep in mind about Detective Hart, he lived over on 17th Street, like Linda said, so this house connected, or this road connected the two. This is a very short stretch of road. Now, we did extensive research into the newspaper articles on Detective Hart, and there's very limited information on him, on the specifics of his death, where exactly he was found. So like Linda said, this is as good a place as any. It's kind of a central point in the road, and it would also make the most sense. If he lived over on 17th Street, it would make the most sense for him to have walked through this way if he was on foot. Hey, I'm Jeff.
I'm Linda.
And we'd like to know if there's anybody else here with us. If there is, could you please try telling us your name? We stopped here on 20th Street, and we decided to do a little bit of a stakeout. We sat in the truck and we started up the spirit box. We figure we'll get just as good a results from having the window down as we would if we're standing right here on the corner. We're here because we are investigators. Back in 1981, almost 40 years ago, there was a man that died along this road from a gunshot wound. His name was Detective Hart. Is there anybody that can tell me if this man did shoot himself or did somebody else shoot him? They say he committed suicide. We want to know if that's the truth. Did he really kill himself? If he didn't kill himself, who was responsible for shooting him? We sat in the truck for some time. We ran the spirit box. We got out. We walked around. We looked around. Do you know a man named Tommy Genova? Did Detective Hart's death have anything to do with the Genova murder? What address along this road was the body found closest to? Running the spirit box here in the truck, had the window down and the antenna going out the window, really didn't hear a lot coming through. There were some low pieces of voices and such that came through. I didn't hear anything that was an exact response to the questions that we were asking, but we're going to have to go back and give it further review.
Did anyone see Detective Hart walking down this road just prior to 9:05 in the morning on that day he was found dead here? Did anyone hear any gunshots? Such a small area, someone would have heard the gunfire if he was killed here. That's what I don't get. Nobody described hearing any kind of gunfire that morning.
That's a good point. Yeah, because this is obviously a residential area.
Yeah.
Obviously, these houses were here in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Somebody
would have heard something.
Yeah.
You don't, and as a detective or somebody that's been on the police force for many, many years, how many years? 35, 45 years he had been on the police force or something. He was a decorated, commendated detective.
Right.
You don't walk down
World War II veteran, Marine, World War II veteran.
Marine, yeah. You don't walk down some little alleyway 3 streets over and shoot yourself at an odd intersection.
And no one hears it.
Yeah. And you wouldn't do that anyway. Like, who's going to do that? If people kill themselves, they kill themselves either far away from home in a location where they don't think they're ever going to be found, or they do it in the comfort of their own home.
Right.
And so there's no reason why. I mean, it was obvious he was shot. He didn't kill himself over at his house and walk over here afterward. So this is obviously not a suicide.
Right.
There's no way.
It seems like he may have very well been. I wonder if he was killed somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
And dropped here.
Yeah. They didn't want to, they wanted him to be dumped close to home, but the thing about this is that there was no major investigation into this.
Right.
Why?
Right.
I mean, it's obvious that this was not a suicide, that there was something shady about this.
Something was definitely shady about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say that there's something about this other police officer, I believe he was the police captain at the time, Frank Rausch. Something about him doesn't sit right with me. He was mentioned in a number of cases with Detective Hart. He worked on the department when Tommy Genova was killed. And there's something that just, I don't know whether you could call it instinct or something that sounds not right about him. And if he was the captain at the time that this guy was killed, that's one of your own. Like, they're a brotherhood. If somebody goes in and there's any chance that this person could have actually been killed and that it wasn't a suicide, you're going to do everything you can to try to figure out who did it, unless you know who did it and you're trying to cover it over and you're trying to keep it quiet.
We came back to the crime scene at night.
Mm-hmm.
We were here a little earlier today. We want to kind of compare our results to see what happens at night versus what happens during the daytime.
Right.
Plus the fact that the crime occurred at night.
It did.
8 o'clock at night?
Yes.
We're right around that time
Right around that
the
time.
crime occurred.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's going to be a little bit quieter. There's not as much ambient noise out here right now, so it may be a little easier to be able to pick something up.
Right, as a rattling car drives by.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Jeff.
I'm Linda.
And aside from the two of us, we'd like to know if there's anybody else here with us. If there is, could you please tell us your name?
When we pulled up outside, we weren't exactly sure we were going to be able to run any spirit box because of the activity out here. But as things started quieting down a little bit, we started running the spirit box.
We're here because we're interested in finding out answers to a murder that was committed in this parking lot in 1981. Is there anybody here that witnessed that murder? When you come down here in the city at night, it's a completely different world than it is during the day. For one, there's a lot less people on the streets, which is what we like, especially if we're doing this sort of a thing where we're running a spirit box.
It was the president of the school board administration right at that time. He was coming for a meeting right about this time, January 26, 1981. He pulled into the parking lot in a small yellow car, and when he got out, he was shot. Do you recall that?
We got out in front of the admin building, and this time we decided to approach it from the outskirts of the parking lot. We stayed on the outskirts of the parking lot with the admin building right next to us, the parking lot where Tommy Genova was killed. We'd like to know the name. We'd like to know the name of the person who shot him.
LeBron James?
That doesn't sound accurate.
In running it, there was a lot of, I guess, ambient noise from radio stations and that sort of thing coming through. I'm not exactly sure that we got anything. I didn't hear anything specific that sounded like a direct response to our questions. We believe there may have been two people who were here. One of them shot him. The other was his accomplice. Do you know who these two people were?
Anything you could tell us about this murder would be very helpful. If you don't know much about the murder, could you tell me where I might be able to go to get answers? I would have loved to have done an EVP session at this location. The only problem is when we're down here, somewhat in the heart of the city, there's so much noise. There's constantly cars driving by. There's a college right next to us, so there's college students walking by. So there's never a time, and I'm sure there's a time when the college kids go to bed, but there's never a time when there's not these cars coming by. There's never a time when you can take an EVP session and discount the outside noises that are around. So it's not very conducive to that. That's why we decided to go with the spirit box.
The murder victim was Tommy Genova, and we'd like to find out, for the sake of his family, for his daughter Lori, we'd like to find out who killed him. Anything you can tell us would be appreciated.
I'll be interested, of course, in reviewing this audio and comparing it to what we got during the day. I'm interested in seeing if we got any similar responses. If there's an answer to one of our questions that we missed, perhaps another lead that we can take in this case.
There have been no recent advancements in the Tommy Genova case, yet it remains active. Someone knows who took his life that fateful night, and the answers are out there. As far as the spirit box responses, was evidence obtained, or was it simply radio chatter?
Can you tell us what kind of a gun was used? The person who committed this act, where did he approach from? The person who committed this act, where did he approach from? Could you tell us your name? There was a man that died along this road from a gunshot wound. Did he really kill himself?
If he didn't kill himself, who was responsible for shooting him?
Did anyone see Detective Hart walking down this road just prior to 9:05 in the morning on that day he was found dead here? Did anyone hear any gunshots? Such a small area, someone would have heard the gunfire if he was killed here.
And aside from the two of us, we'd like to know if there's anybody else here with us. We're here because we're interested.
Can you tell us if or was involved?